On a quiet kitchen table, James replayed a shaky phone video while an unknown text flashed. "Cameras don't leave once they find you. Protect her. Protect the girls." A peeled seal sticker clung to his thumb, proof someone had reached for a resort crate. She kept her face turned from the window, and James still did not know why she ran from attention like it could burn. Another ping landed, colder. One seal code had been entered wrong, and the corporate system had auto-rejected the whole pallet. If a stranger's camera threatened a family's peace, what would wise women do first? It began before sunrise on Monday. The kitchen smelled of guava tea, and James set the Hill Fruits audit binder beside a small digital scale. His phone glowed with an unread notification. Why did she stiffen every time a camera entered the air? Monday started before sunrise because farms did not wait for contracts. James and she left the girls with Mr. Hung's family, with Anna whispering, "No cameras at our house, right?" She answered, "Right," and knew it could not become a maybe. Hai waved her toy orange and shouted, "Go!" The road toward Hill Fruits smelled of wet leaves and sweet fruit. James kept the binder on his lap, tabs like armor, logs, declarations, SOPs, seal codes, rejection criteria. "The resort wants a story," he said. "The contract wants proof." She looked ahead, because story was exactly what could swallow the girls. The pack house was plain but orderly. Foam padding on tables, crates stacked by grade, the scale waiting. James checked the cold storage display, snapped a photo of the temperature, and pocketed the phone. "No estimates," he said. The first open loop tightened. If a number disappeared, who would claim it was negligence? At 8:55, corporate vehicles arrived. The procurement director stepped out first. The auditor followed, scanning corners. The brand camera lead hopped down last, rig in hand. "This is perfect," she said, turning her lens toward the workers. She stepped into the camera's path. "Product only," she said. "No faces without consent, no personal stories." The camera lead laughed. "Our audience loves human moments." James answered flat and calm. "Our contract loves compliance." The procurement director added, "Pack house footage only." The smile tightened. "Fine," the camera lead said. They started at receiving. James raised a hand as a partner pickup backed in. "Hold!" He pointed to the sheet. "Arrival time, supplier code, batch number, core temperature." The auditor watched the thermometer probe and the number land on paper. "Target range?" she asked. "Chilled but not shocked," she answered. The auditor wrote without praise. At grading, she lifted a guava and showed the bruise rule. B grade never entered resort crates. James measured bricks on a random sample and recorded it. "You do bricks testing?" the auditor asked. "Consistency sells," James said. The camera floated toward her face again. She shifted so the lens caught only hands and fruit, and a second open loop sharpened. If the brand lead wanted a human angle, what line would she try to cross next? A motorbike snapped up to the gate. A man in an agriculture office vest strode in holding a paper high. "Inspection," he announced loudly. "Complaint of pesticide misuse." Her stomach dropped. The auditor's attention sharpened. The camera lead's eyes brightened. James kept his voice even. "Who filed the complaint?" "Anonymous," the man said. James nodded once. "Then it gets handled professionally." Officer Thu appeared at the doorway. No sirens, just presence. "Show your ID," Thu said. The man hesitated, then handed it over. Thu studied it and returned it. "Proceed cleanly," Thu said. "No photos of minors, no private areas." The inspector frowned but complied. James opened the binder and laid out documents. Declarations, chemical logs, partner affidavits, third-party results. "Here is what was used, when and by whom," he said. The auditor leaned closer. "Third-party tests?" "Weekly," James answered. She added, "Samples are fine, but chain of custody is sealed bags, timestamps, signatures." The inspector looked annoyed, but fairness left him no argument. He took samples. James photographed the seal numbers and logged each time. When the camera lead angled toward the complaint paper, James lowered his voice. "Do not film that," he said. "That is litigation bait." The procurement director nodded once. The first payoff landed. The accusation did not collapse the room because the paper trail held. The inspector left, and relief tried to return. It did not last. Luan called. James put it on speaker. "Someone tried to open a sealed crate at the shop," Luan said. Her breath shortened. "Did he break the seal?" James asked. "Not yet," Luan replied. "But he tried. I filmed it. Mr. Hung is here." Mr. Hung's calm voice followed. "He's gone now, but he'll come back if he thinks you're distracted." James answered, "Lock the gate. 2-person rule for every crate. If he returns, call Thu." "Already locked," Luan said. "Already ready." James ended the call and said quietly, "This is what Spotlight looks like." Hands reaching. The auditor had heard it all. She said nothing, but she watched the rest of the process more closely. They finished packing. Each crate received label, seal sticker, and verification code logged against the pickup list. James read codes aloud while she marked the sheet, and the auditor demanded random repeats that he answered without irritation. Ordinary work sounds filled the room, yet every motion carried the same question. Who was trying to turn process into failure? At the end, the auditor closed her clipboard. "I see process," she said. The procurement director added, "If the lab samples return clean, we proceed." The camera lead pushed again. "No family interview," James answered. "No, fruit, hands, and a clean process." The procurement director cut in. "That's enough." The vehicles left, and the farm went quiet. Back at the gate shop, Luan sent the video. James watched it twice and saved it into a folder labeled Incidents, Evidence. A peeled seal sticker clung to his thumb. For one breath, relief returned. The walkthrough was done, and the deal had not died in the room. Then James's phone chimed with an automated corporate notice tied to the seal codes. One line stood out. Verification mismatch. Pallet auto-rejected. The digits on paper were correct. The digit in the system was not. The midpoint twist landed with a sharper truth. Someone had not merely reached for a crate. Someone had altered identity. "Well, if the system rejects it," she said, "the resort never even sees the fruit." James tapped the binder once. "Then someone wants failure recorded as our mistake," he said, and opened incidents, evidence to attach seal photos and timestamps for Thu. When strangers circle a family through business, what would wise women advise first? Silence, confrontation, or a careful paper trail? An unknown number texted one line: "Cameras don't leave once they find you." James did not reply. He walked to the window and saw the brand van rolling back through the gate. The brand van rolled back through the gate as if it belonged there. James stepped outside first, calm but squared, and she stayed half a pace behind him, so the doorway still framed the pack house, not the girl's future. The camera lead climbed out with the same bright smile, but her hands were too quick. Already adjusting settings, already hunting a face. "We forgot a pickup shot," the camera lead said. "Just 10 minutes. James did not argue. He moved like a man closing a door without slamming it. "No," he said. "The audit is complete. Product footage was agreed. Leave." The procurement director was not in the van now. Neither was the auditor. That absence tightened the loop. The brand team had come back alone, and alone meant fewer rules. The camera lead's smile cooled. "Corporate loves authenticity," she pressed. Her lens tilted toward the receiving table where the seal code sheet lay open. James covered the paper with his palm. "Corporate loves liability," he replied. "No paperwork, no minors, no faces." He turned his head slightly. "Thu?" Officer Thu appeared near the gate, as if he had never truly left. "Packhouse was approved for audit," Thu said. "This is not audit. This is media. Leave the property." The camera lead's mouth opened, then closed. She lifted her hands in a small, offended gesture and climbed back into the van. As the van backed out, James exhaled once, quiet, controlled. The fast payoff came within minutes. The immediate camera threat had been handled cleanly, with an ally and a boundary that held. But safety did not arrive with the departing tires. James returned to the packing table and opened the corporate portal on his phone, then set it beside the scale, so the screen stayed visible to Thu and to her. The auto-rejection message still sat there. Verification mismatch. Pallet auto-rejected. James compared the digit string against his photos of the seal sticker. The photos matched the paper. The system did not. "That mismatch did not happen by accident," she said. James nodded. "It happened by access." He called Luan. "Talk to James." Luan answered instantly, as if he had been holding his phone in his palm all day. "The guy who reached for the crate came back," Luan said. "He didn't cross the gate this time. He just stood outside like he wanted to be seen." "Did he say anything?" James asked. He said, "Tell your boss the resort won't take stolen labels." Then he smiled like he'd done something clever. A third loop snapped open. Stolen labels. If someone could swap or copy a seal sticker, the system could reject perfect fruit with one keystroke, and the blame would look like incompetence. James's eyes narrowed in a way she had learned to trust. "Send the full video," he said, "and the gate camera clips from the last 48 hours. He ended the call and looked at Thu. "Can the corporate portal log show who entered the seal code?" Thu nodded. "If the procurement director cooperates, yes." He paused, then added, "If he doesn't, a warrant can make him." James's phone buzzed again. Not another anonymous warning. An email from the procurement director. "Heard there was a complaint at your site. The brand team wants additional footage. Also, our system flagged seal code irregularities. Please explain immediately." James read it twice. "He is moving fast," she said. "He is covering someone," James replied, voice low. "Or he is the someone." They did not shout. They did not spiral. They returned to process, because process was their safest language. Back home that evening, the kitchen table became a war room without ever losing its warmth. The girls slept. A bowl of oranges sat in the center like an ordinary blessing. The audit binder lay open. James lined up object anchors in a neat row. The seal sticker photo prints, the corporate auto rejection screen, and Luan's video paused on the frame where the crate reacher's fingers hovered at the seam. "My two-person rule saved the seal," she said quietly. "And evidence saves the story," James answered, though he never used the word story like a brand lead did. He used it the way a man uses truth. Anna's earlier whisper came back to her. "No cameras at our house, right?" She went to the hallway and checked the curtains, then returned. Her hands shook, not from fear of business, but from fear that attention always brought hungry people. James noticed. "What is it?" he asked. She considered lying. She did not. "When people film," she said, "they don't stop at fruit. They ask about the girls. They ask where they sleep. They ask why Anna flinches when a phone flashes." Her voice tightened. She already had enough strangers in her life. James's jaw worked once, slow. "Then the answer is the same," he said. "Boundary, documentation, protection." He made a call to the procurement director and put it on speaker so she could hear. The director answered with polite impatience. "James, I need an explanation." James kept his tone flat, professional. "The seal code entered in your portal does not match the seal sticker on the crate," he said. "James has time-stamped photos, packing logs, and chain of custody signatures. James is requesting the portal audit trail. Who entered the code, when, and from what device?" A pause. "That takes time," the director said. "It takes 2 clicks," James replied. "And if it is delayed, the rejection stands, and the financial damage is on the party who altered the record." The director's voice sharpened. "Are you accusing corporate staff?" James did not rise to the bait. "James is describing a mismatch and requesting logs. A third-party lab also has samples in progress. James will forward evidence to legal and to Officer Thu." Another pause, longer. "Send your documentation," the director said. "Tonight." James sent it before the call ended. 10 minutes later, Thu texted one line. "Meet at station at 7:30 a.m. Bring binder plus phone." The next morning, the station smelled of paper and strong coffee. Thu sat with James and her at a plain table, no theatrics, only procedure. James opened the incidents, evidence folder, and laid out the chain. Timestamps, seal photos, the auto rejection, the crate reacher video, and the brand van return. Thu watched the video twice. "That man is a runner," Thu said. "He wants you to react so you look guilty." "And the portal change?" James asked. Thu slid a printed request form across the table. "If procurement cooperates, we get portal logs. If not, we escalate." He tapped the form once. "But there's more. That agriculture office vest yesterday. His ID number doesn't match the agency list." She felt her stomach tighten again. "So the inspection was staged," she said. Thu nodded. "Not a real inspector, a costume." The sharper truth tied back to the earlier object anchor. The complaint paper had never been about safety. It had been about distraction, getting a camera pointed, getting a corporate record altered, getting a family to stumble. James's phone rang, and this time the number was not unknown. It was the auditor. "James," the auditor said, voice clipped but not hostile. The sample lab results came in early, clean, no residue flags. For a moment, relief arrived like sunlight on the table. One major loop paid off cleanly. The pesticide accusation was dead. But the auditor continued. "However," she added, "the corporate portal shows your pallet as rejected. Procurement claims your team entered the wrong seal digit." James did not move. "James did not," he said evenly. "Someone entered it after the fact." The auditor hesitated. "Then prove it." James glanced at Thu. Thu nodded once and slid a new paper toward James. An official request number. "Now procurement has to answer," Thu said. James spoke into the phone. "James has a police request for the audit trail. James will share it with you. Please hold procurement from issuing a final decision until the portal log is produced." The auditor paused again, then said, "Send it. And send your seal photo set. If your documentation holds, James gets a hearing." After the call, she finally allowed herself a slow breath. The fear to safety pattern returned. A sharp sting had landed. Then grounding arrived through an ally and a lawful process. They drove straight to the corporate regional office, not to plead, but to present. The lobby was too glossy, too cold. James carried the binder like a weapon made of paper. She carried the sealed envelope Thu had provided, stamped across the flap, because evidence mattered more when it looked like evidence. In a conference room, the procurement director sat with the brand camera lead. The camera lead avoided her eyes. The director smiled tightly. "We are very concerned," he began. James did not let him build a speech. He placed the binder on the table and opened it to the seal photo page. "Here's the seal sticker," he said. "Here's the packing log. Here's the chain of custody signature. Here is the auto rejection timestamp. Here is the police request for the portal audit trail." The director's smile flickered. "That's quite aggressive." "It is quite necessary," James replied. The brand camera lead tried a different angle. "If you'd let us film a human segment, the audience would understand." James cut her off. "This is not a show," he said. "This is food safety, worker dignity, and children's privacy." She watched the director's eyes flick toward the sealed envelope. He recognized what it was. Not a threat, but a path that removed his control. A junior IT manager was called in, pale and careful. "We can pull the portal logs," the manager said. "We can see who keyed the seal code." The procurement director's voice sharpened. "Do it," he said, but his face suggested he wanted the room to stay fuzzy. The IT manager typed, then hesitated. "The entry was not made from hill fruits," he said slowly. "It was entered from a corporate device." Silence landed hard. "Which device?" James asked. The IT manager swallowed. "A tablet assigned to the brand unit." The camera lead's head snapped up. "That's impossible," she said too quickly. Thu stepped forward and set his badge on the table without drama. "It is not impossible," Thu said. "It is recorded." Who had the tablet? The camera lead looked at the procurement director as if asking permission to breathe. The director's jaw tightened. "My team does not alter compliance records," he said. James turned to the IT manager. "Pull the login," he said. The IT manager nodded and pointed to the screen. The login was a shared account, he admitted. But the biometric unlock on the tablet, Face ID, matches the camera lead. The camera lead went white. "That's not," she began. Thu's voice stayed level. "Ma'am, this is interference with a commercial transaction and falsification of records," he said. "There's also a staged inspection attempt with a fake vest. If you are cooperating, now is the time." Her bravado cracked. "Procurement told me to," she blurted, then clapped a hand over her mouth as if she could catch the words. Her eyes flashed to the director in panic. "He said if the pallet got rejected, you'd have to do an interview to save the launch. He said the audience needs a family angle." The procurement director stood abruptly. "That is absurd!" he barked. James stayed seated. He looked at the director the way he looked at a misprinted number, as something to be corrected, not feared. "James recorded this meeting," he said calmly, and tapped the phone on the table. "James informed all parties at the start. It is on the agenda line." The director froze. He had been so used to controlling narratives that he had forgotten the simplest truth. Paper and procedure cut through power. Thu lifted the sealed envelope and slid it across to the director. "This is the request for corporate records and a statement of incident," Thu said. "The district office will contact legal. No further contact with the farm or the children." The director's face drained. He sat down slowly, as if his legs had turned unreliable. Outside the building, the air felt different. Still cold, still real, but no longer trapped. James looked at her. "Safety is not a feeling," he said. "Safety is a set of actions that hold." She nodded, and the weight in her chest shifted from fear to something steadier. Not triumph, not revenge. Just the quiet relief of being believed. 2 days later, the auditor called again. "Procurement has been removed from the account," she said. "The brand unit has been suspended pending investigation. The resort contract proceeds." She paused. Your documentation set is the cleanest I've seen. James thanked her politely and ended the call. Then he turned off his phone and set it in a drawer, as if he were putting away a weapon after the battle. That Saturday, Hill Fruits did what it always promised to do. It opened the gate shop, it stacked crates by grade, and it served the community before it served any brand. Luan enforced the two-person rule like gospel. Mr. Hung stood at the gate, not as a guard who threatened, but as a neighbor who watched. Anna helped arrange oranges into a tidy pyramid, and Nye taped a handwritten sign near the scale. We weigh fair. She looked up at James. Did we win? She asked. James crouched to her level. No one wins when people lie, he said gently, but we kept what matters safe. Anna's eyes flicked toward the road, then back to the shop light. No cameras? She whispered. She answered before James could. No cameras, she said. Not in our home. Not on your face. Not unless you choose. She touched Anna's hair once, slow, a routine detail that felt like a prayer. Later, as the afternoon softened, the procurement director's replacement arrived. Not with a camera rig, but with a plain truck and a signed addendum acknowledging privacy boundaries and chain of custody rules. He shook James's hand, then nodded to her with respect instead of curiosity. Product story only, he said. And compliance. That night, the kitchen table held only supper and a small bowl of oranges. The audit binder was closed, not because vigilance ended, but because peace had earned a place again. The Hill Fruits light glowed outside, steady and ordinary. James checked the locks once, then returned to the table. He took her hand, warm and present. In the quiet, safety finally felt like what it truly was. Community, rules that held, and a home no camera could claim.